Father's Day last year began like any other. I woke up early, as I always did, waiting for my wife and teenage daughters to join me. On Mother's Day, I'd go all out for my wife, treating her to breakfast mimosas, a gourmet lunch of cheeses and fruit, and her favorite steak dinner in the evening. Over the years, as the girls grew older, I took full responsibility for her pampering, ensuring her day was nothing short of special. Father's Day, however, usually played out differently. My wife typically made me a hearty breakfast, but last year was an exception. I waited in the kitchen, stomach growling, until she finally stirred from bed. By the time she joined me, I was starving. She kissed me good morning and got to work preparing breakfast for the family. Later, we went out for lunch at a quirky little cafe famous for its Doctor Who-themed sandwiches. My wife, who loved organizing every detail of our lives, had arranged the outing in advance. She was meticulous when it came to planning, using her calendar as a guide for everything, from holidays to the girls' activities. Nothing slipped through the cracks unless I was involved. That year, she pointed out that my birthday coincided with Father's Day, joking about the prospect of double gifts and promising to make the day extra special. I kissed her cheek, hopeful that this promise would lead to more than the usual gestures. On birthdays and Father's Day, she often indulged me with certain intimate treats that she only teased about on regular days. It was a rare but appreciated tradition, and I was looking forward to it. As the weeks rolled by, though, things started to feel off. My wife, typically grounded and consistent, began behaving in ways that didn't make sense to me. She started working later than usual, dressing up more for her shifts at the bakery, and even putting on makeup, a detail she typically reserved for special occasions. Then came the Friday night when she told me she was going out with coworkers, which struck me as highly unusual. We were a close-knit couple who preferred each other's company over social outings. Friday nights were almost always spent together, usually on the couch, watching a show or sharing a bottle of wine. That night, though, she came downstairs in a brand-new skirt, tan stockings, and heels, looking as if she'd spent hours at a salon. When I whistled playfully, assuming we had plans together, she gave me a smile and said, "I'm going out with coworkers tonight." Surprised, I asked why she hadn't mentioned it earlier. She looked uneasy, fumbling with an explanation about how it was a last-minute plan. Her polished appearance didn't quite match her story, but I held my tongue. Confronting her felt like a step too far, even as unease settled in the pit of my stomach. The possibility of infidelity seemed absurd. My wife was the picture of a devoted suburban mother and wife. Despite my growing doubts, our physical connection remained strong. Our intimacy hadn't suffered, which made her behavior even harder to understand. When I asked her about the night out, she dismissed my concerns, claiming she'd worked a half-day and just wanted to look nice for herself. Before I could ask more, she hurried out the door. She returned near midnight, her hair thrown up in a messy bun, far from the polished look she had when she left. Ignoring me entirely, she headed straight for the shower, leaving me with a sense of unease I couldn't shake. By the next morning, I was still wrestling with my suspicions. My wife didn't wake to see me off for work, which was unusual for her. Normally, she'd at least stir long enough to wish me a good day. I let it slide, though the knot in my stomach only tightened. At work, Megan, the morning barista, greeted me at the store entrance. With her fiery red hair and striking blue eyes, she always managed to catch my attention, despite my commitment to my marriage. There was something magnetic about her, though I never acted on the thought. "Good morning, Mark," she called out cheerfully, waiting for me to unlock the doors. It was still half an hour before opening. "Morning, Megan," I replied. She tilted her head, studying me. "You look like you've got a lot on your mind." I sighed. "Yeah, just one of those days." Without prying, she smiled. "Let me grab you some coffee. You look like you could use it." "Thanks. I'll stop by in a bit," I said, managing a faint smile as I unlocked the doors. I spent the next hour making my rounds on the floor, checking in with the department crews. My managers were capable and efficient, but I made a point of maintaining a personal connection with the team. It was important to me that they felt valued, and I believed they appreciated the effort. Eventually, I made my way to the coffee shop, where Megan had my usual black coffee waiting. "Here you go, Mark. The finest brew Megamart has to offer," she joked, sliding the cup toward me. Thanks, Megan, I replied, leaving $2 on the counter. No need to pay, boss, she said with a grin. I can't risk it, I said, shaking my head. Even for a coffee, someone might complain to corporate, and it's just not worth the hassle. She seemed a little offended but nodded. Got it, boss. I'd never cause trouble for you. I know, I said, offering a smile. It's just easier to cover my bases. With coffee in hand, I returned to my tasks. The day passed uneventfully, save for an elderly woman attempting to steal bird food, which gave me a welcome distraction. When I got home that evening, my wife and daughters were heading out to a concert with other families. I'd forgotten the event was marked on the calendar. While I wanted to talk to Laura about the growing tension between us, I decided to wait for a better moment. With the house empty, I gave in to my suspicions. I opened her email, expecting to find nothing. To my surprise, her inbox was clean. No messages from anyone suspicious. While it was a relief, it didn't entirely ease my doubts. Something still felt wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was brewing beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. Since my wife had a cell phone, there was no way to check her texts or call log. Searching her clothes for clues didn't help either. She had already done her Saturday laundry, leaving me empty-handed. Frustrated, I went to bed after watching a movie, still unable to shake the unsettling feeling. The next morning, both my birthday and Father's Day began like any other. I sat on the terrace with my toast and coffee, enjoying the fresh air and birds chirping in the trees. It was a peaceful moment, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Around 9, I went inside to refill my coffee and found my wife and daughters packing lunch. What's going on? I asked, surprised by their early activity. We're going to the beach. Emily, my youngest, said cheerfully. The beach? I repeated, confused that they hadn't mentioned this before. Laura nodded, but didn't offer much explanation. The girls seemed excited as they loaded the cooler into the car. As they left, I realized they hadn't forgotten my birthday, but their lack of acknowledgement stung. A little while later, the phone rang. Hoping it was them calling back with a surprise, I answered. It was my mom. Happy birthday and Father's Day, Marky, she said warmly. Thanks, Mom, I replied. Laura must have told you about the plans for today? Mom hesitated. Plans? She just left with the girls for the beach. I thought you were going too. Oh, I said, trying to hide my disappointment. That's unusual. Normally, she plans something special, or at least make breakfast. She has been acting a bit strange lately, Mom said. But don't worry, Marky. I'm sure she has something planned for later. Love you, Mom, I said, grateful for her encouragement. Not long after, the phone rang again. This time, it was my assistant, Grace. Sorry to bother you on Father's Day, Mark, but there was an incident at the coffee shop, she said. What happened? Was Megan involved? I asked, concerned. Yes. A customer shoved her on the stairs, and she fell. She's at St. Alex's getting x-rays. Looks like she might have broken her arm. Poor girl, I said. Do you need me to come in? No, it's under control. Just wanted to give you a heads up for tomorrow. Thanks for letting me know, Grace. After the call, I decided to treat myself to breakfast. IHOP was packed with families celebrating Father's Day, and seeing so many happy dads with their kids was overwhelming. I left and opted for McDonald's instead, where I enjoyed a quieter meal with coffee and a sandwich. I took my food to the park and sat on a bench, reminiscing about how much had changed. I thought about the boating trips I used to take with my daughters when they were little, how their laughter used to fill the air. Now, as they neared college, they seemed to spend more time with their mother, leaving me feeling more like a bystander in their lives. By midday, I accepted that there wouldn't be a family dinner. I grabbed a Reuben from the Doctor Who-themed cafe and scrolled through Facebook while I ate. A post from my mother-in-law about their beach trip caught my attention. Laura had been posting pictures of their fun day, filled with smiles and laughter. Seeing them enjoying themselves so much deepened my sadness. Hoping for a distraction, I went to a sports bar, but the lively atmosphere didn't suit my mood. I ended up at a cigar lounge, treating myself to an expensive Opus X. The quiet, smoky room felt comforting. While I was there, an older man invited me to join his card game. I'm Mark, I said, shaking hands with him and his brother. "Lance," he said, gesturing to the man beside him. "And this is Jerry." As we played, the conversation turned to family. "No kids today?" Jerry asked. "My wife and daughters are at the beach," I said, trying to sound casual. "I guess they forgot it's Father's Day." "Tough break," Lance said sympathetically. "I rarely see my boys anymore. They're both in the service." Jerry added, "My daughter's in California. I'm visiting her next week for my grandson's second birthday." "That sounds great," I said, feeling nostalgic for the days when my girls were young. Eventually, the topic shifted back to my wife. Jerry asked bluntly, "Do you think she forgot today? Or is she avoiding you?" The question hit harder than I expected. I hesitated, then admitted the strange behavior I'd noticed. The late nights, dressing up more, vague explanations. "She's cheating on you," Lance said, his tone matter-of-fact, with Jerry nodding in agreement. "I don't want to believe that," I said, though their words echoed the thoughts I'd been trying to suppress. Lance leaned in. "Listen, Mark, I've been there. The changes, the distance, it all adds up. I divorced my first wife for cheating, and it was hell. If you love her, think about forgiveness." "Thanks," I said, though I doubted I could ever forgive something like that. As the evening wore on, I returned home. Scrolling through Facebook, I saw more beach photos from Laura and the girls. Dinner time came and went with no word from them. Enough, I thought. It was time to face reality. My wife had forgotten both my birthday and Father's Day. What did it matter now? What counted was the growing certainty that my wife had cheated, especially after her strange behavior on Friday night. It was as if she wanted me to know, as if rubbing it in my face was her goal, and now she'd succeeded. Determined not to let the bitterness consume me, I decided to take control of the evening. If my family wouldn't celebrate with me, I'd treat myself to a dinner at my favorite steakhouse. After a shower, I dressed in my sport coat and slacks, determined to make the night feel special. When I arrived, the restaurant was bustling, so I took a seat at the bar while waiting for a table. As I ordered a champagne bottle for myself, an older man sat beside me, eyeing my solitary glass with a curious frown. He ordered a martini but couldn't resist asking, "Celebrating alone? Or taking someone else's place?" "Just me tonight," I replied. He nodded knowingly. "I'm waiting for my family, 3 generations, though my daughter just broke her arm this morning. Funny how grown kids still find ways to keep you busy." We chatted briefly, and he mentioned his wife would have her hands full taking care of their injured daughter and granddaughter for a while. Before I could respond, a young girl's voice cut through the noise. "Grandpa," she squealed, running across the bar to shower the man with hugs and kisses. As I smiled at their exchange, I heard another familiar voice call my name. Turning, I saw Megan approaching with her mother and her own daughter, Chloe. The resemblance between Megan and her mother, Olivia, was striking. "Hey, Megan," I said. "How's your arm?" "It's okay. The painkillers help, but it wasn't fun when they said it," she replied. Megan introduced me to her parents, Ethan and Olivia, and little Chloe, who beamed at me shyly. "Where's your wife, Mark?" Olivia asked, her tone casual but curious. "She took the girls to the beach this morning. I haven't heard from them all day," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "On Father's Day? And your birthday too?" "That's terrible," Olivia said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Forget about her," she added. "You're joining us for dinner." I hesitated, but Ethan grinned and said, "You don't want to argue with her, Mark. Trust me." I laughed awkwardly, trying to decline. "It's your day with your family. I don't want to intrude." "Nonsense," Ethan said, waving off my protest. "It's our day, Mark. Grandpa, remember?" As their table's buzzer went off, Ethan left a tip on the bar and gestured for me to follow. Megan apologized for her parents' pushiness, but I reassured her. Eating alone would have been worse. At the table, the conversation remained light. We shared anecdotes about our daughters, and Chloe giggled at stories about her mom's childhood. It was comforting, though bittersweet, to connect with people who valued family. At one point, my phone buzzed persistently on the table. "Your wife?" Olivia asked. "Yeah," I said with a sigh. "It's complicated." Olivia looked at me sympathetically. Maybe you can find a way to forgive her, she said, glancing meaningfully at Ethan. I thanked them for the company and paid the bill, leaving the restaurant with a swirl of thoughts. As I drove home, my phone continued buzzing, but I ignored it. By the time I pulled into the garage, my daughters greeted me with hugs and kisses. We're so sorry for forgetting Father's Day, Daddy, Emily said, looking heartbroken. It's okay, I reassured her, though my heart wasn't in it. I don't expect you to remember my birthday. Emily's face fell in shock. Wait, it's your birthday today? She rushed inside, yelling at her mother. Daddy, we didn't know. We're so sorry. You must hate us, Emily lamented, tears streaming down her face. No, sweetheart, I said, hugging her tightly. I love you more than anything. It's okay, really. Don't worry about it. The chaos in the kitchen was deafening, so I excused myself and went upstairs to change. When I came back down, the noise had subsided, and I found Laura sitting alone, crying at the kitchen table. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I shook my head and walked past her, retreating to the deck with a beer and a cigar. The quiet night air brought a small measure of peace. As I stared at the stars, Laura stepped outside. Mark, she began, but I cut her off. What's his name? I asked sharply. Her silence was answer enough. In that moment, I realized our marriage was over. Nearly 20 years of my life felt like a mistake. How long had she been unfaithful? Was he her first? Did I even know him? Questions spiraled in my mind, along with darker thoughts. Could I even be sure the girls were mine? That night, I resolved to request paternity tests as part of the divorce, not only for my peace of mind, but also to confront Laura with her betrayal. I spent hours researching divorce laws online before falling asleep on the couch, a bitter ending to my birthday. When I woke at 5, Laura was still asleep in our bedroom. Her undressed body curled around a pillow, looking as peaceful as ever. For a fleeting moment, I admired her beauty, but the thought was fleeting. She was no longer mine. After a quick shower, I headed out quietly but ran into Emily in the hallway. How bad is it, Dad? She asked, her face full of worry. As bad as it can get, I sighed. Can you forgive her? It's just one mistake, she pleaded. Honey, it's more than forgetting my birthday or Father's Day. She cheated on me, I said gently but firmly. No, Dad. She wouldn't do that. Something must have pushed her, Emily insisted, tears welling up in her eyes. Think about it. She's been acting strange for weeks. Friday night, she went out dressed up, but not for you. Can't you forgive her, even if it was just one time? Emily's words stung, but they only confirmed what I already knew. Laura had avoided me all weekend out of guilt, or worse, resentment. Our family outings had always included me, but now she'd gone without me entirely. No, Emily, I said quietly. I can't. I doubt that's the case, honey, I told Emily gently. But look at her actions this weekend. Has she shown any love toward me at all? Emily's eyes filled with tears as she shook her head. Daddy, you didn't see her when Grandma called. She asked why Mom hadn't wished Grandpa a happy Father's Day, and Mom just dropped the phone. She screamed, no, so loudly we thought Grandpa had a heart attack. She dropped to her knees and sobbed. Emily continued. It was terrifying. She kept saying over and over that she loves you. Sophie even wanted to call an ambulance, but we managed to calm her down and got her to sit on the couch. We tried to convince her to call you, but she wouldn't. She just couldn't stop crying. I sighed, unsure how to respond. I don't know what to say, Emily. She may claim to love me, but her actions speak otherwise. Cheating isn't love, it's selfishness. Love is about sacrifice, about thinking of the other person. When she was with another man, she abandoned me. Emily hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her face. It can't have been just some random guy she met at a bar, Daddy. There must have been flirting, or she let him make moves on her. Kissing, touching, maybe even more. It's betrayal. You don't do that to someone you love. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I don't know what to think anymore, sweetheart, I said. Please, Daddy, don't divorce her. Promise me you'll think about it, she pleaded. I nodded reluctantly. We'll talk more later. Go check on Sophie, I told her. She walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I promised myself I'd try to have a family discussion, but the truth was, I wasn't sure how much longer we'd still be a family. The day dragged on. I distracted myself at work by handling the paperwork for Megan's accident, helping her fill out forms since she struggled with her left hand. "How's home?" Megan asked softly. I shook my head. "Not good." She didn't deny the affair when I confronted her. Megan's eyes softened. "I'm sorry, Mark. I get it, though. My ex cheated on me when I was pregnant with Chloe. I kicked him out before she was born, and my mom wasn't happy. She even called me disposable." "Wow," I said, taken aback. "That makes what your mom said last night make more sense. She kept looking at your dad when she talked about forgiveness. Makes me wonder if one of them cheated too." Megan nodded. "Yeah, I noticed. But if they're happy deceiving each other, that's their business. I'd rather not live with a liar," she said firmly. I couldn't argue with that. Returning home, I found the house empty again. Frustration mounting, I decided to drive to Laura's grocery store. Her car was parked out back, and as I approached, I saw her sitting inside with a young man. When she noticed me, her face twisted in panic. She yelled something, but I turned and walked away before she could explain. Furious, I drove home, packed my bags, and booked a room at a nearby hotel. When Emily and Sophie begged me to stay, I told them the truth. "I saw your mom with a man in her car after work," I said firmly. "There's no innocent explanation for what I saw." "Dad, there must be a mistake," Sophie pleaded. "I wish there was," I said, shaking my head. "But there isn't. Your mom broke up our family, not me. I love you girls, and I'll keep in touch every day." Their sobs echoed through the house as I drove out of the garage. Laura sped past me on the street, nearly hitting my car. The next week was torture. Laura bombarded me with calls and messages, which I ignored. My family begged me to hear her out, but no one could confirm her infidelity. Frustrated, I told my daughters not to mention their mother during our conversations. I met with a lawyer and prepared to split the house evenly, despite my larger financial contributions. Since Laura could support herself, I would no alimony, but the lack of proof of her affair made the case trickier. Still, I was ready to move forward. When served the divorce papers, Laura rallied her family against me, claiming it was a one-time mistake the Friday before my birthday. Her relatives vilified me for refusing to forgive her, and even my daughters resisted until I told them a court-ordered DNA test might be required. Eventually, Laura sent a letter admitting to a fling with a 21-year-old. It was the proof I needed to finalize the divorce without further disputes. Despite her resistance, the judge approved the terms, which were fair to both parties. The fallout was devastating. Laura painted me as cold and unforgiving, and even my mother and daughters distanced themselves from me. I left voicemails for Emily and Sophie every day, hoping they wouldn't think I'd abandoned them, but their silence was unbearable. One small comfort came in the form of Sunday morning coffee with Megan. We met at a local coffee shop near her home, where Chloe would watch cartoons while Megan and I talked. "Your daughters will come around, Mark," she reassured me one morning. "They're living with your wife. Who knows what she's telling them? But they'll see the truth eventually." "I hope so," I said, my voice heavy with sadness. "I miss them so much." The next week, I was sitting at the coffee shop, engrossed in a book, when I heard a familiar voice. "Hey, stranger," Megan said, smiling as she approached with Chloe. I looked up and welcomed them warmly. "Are you stalking me? Or is this part of your routine?" she teased, her grin playful. I chuckled. "No, I live nearby. Sunday mornings are my time to read and relax. It gets lonely at home." Her smile softened, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope that life might eventually get better. We chatted about the neighborhood for a while before parting ways. Meeting Megan and Chloe every Sunday wasn't something we planned. It just happened naturally. Her company was enjoyable, and little Chloe's cheerful personality was a delight. Those mornings became a comforting ritual, something I found myself looking forward to each week. The day my divorce was finalized, I decided to visit my former home. Knocking on the door, Laura answered with tear-streaked cheeks. Without saying a word, she stepped aside, silently inviting me in. "Are the girls home?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "They're at a school musical," she replied, her voice trembling. I knew you'd come tonight. So you waited until it was too late to stop it, didn't you? I said with a smirk. She nodded, tears spilling down her face. Yes, I knew you'd try to beg and plead, but I couldn't let that happen. You broke my heart, Laura. There's no forgiveness for that, I said firmly. It was one mistake, Mark. Just one. Why couldn't you forgive me? She pleaded, her voice cracking. Did you love me when you were with him? Did you love me when you ignored me on my birthday? I countered. If that's your version of love, then it's beyond repair. I never wanted this to happen, she sobbed. And I never wanted a cheating wife, I snapped. But here we are. She tried to speak again, but I cut her off. Laura, you not only broke my heart, you turned my mother and daughters against me. I'll never forgive you for that. You acted irrationally, she said defensively. If you don't make things right with my family, I warned, I'll expose your infidelity to every man you date. I don't need anyone else, she whispered. Wrong answer, I said coldly. Then I'll find other ways to hurt and embarrass you. As I stood to leave, she grabbed my arm. It's not my fault, she cried. Oh, really? Did I cheat on you? I shot back. You've normalized cheating for our daughters. They'll think it's okay because you convinced them it was a one-time mistake. Well, I won't go down because of some idiot who made you feel desirable. I pulled my arm free. Rot in hell for ending our marriage over a fling. I spat, leaving her in tears. For the first time, her distress didn't affect me. A few weeks later, Megan knocked on my office door. Got a second, Mark? She asked hesitantly. Sure. Come on in, I replied, though I frowned, expecting bad news. Does the company have rules about dating coworkers? She asked, her voice light but careful. I stiffened. I had hoped to ask her out myself, but it seemed I was too late. We don't allow relationships between supervisors and subordinates to avoid intimidation issues, I explained. Otherwise, no rules. Good, she said with a relieved smile. She left a small card on my desk. That's my address and number. Let's have dinner tomorrow night. Chloe will be joining us. I couldn't help but smile. I'd love to. That night, I left a voicemail for my daughters. Hey, it's Dad. Hope you and your sister are doing well. Nothing new here, except a coworker asked me out. Anyway, I love you and miss you. Call me soon. I knew mentioning Megan might stir up trouble, but I didn't mind. I needed to move forward, and I was grateful Megan had taken the lead. She wasn't just beautiful. She had a kind, steady character. Her daughter was wonderful, and I had already met her parents. For the first time in a long while, things felt like they were looking up. Just 15 minutes later, Laura texted me, calling me a fool for dating already. I laughed at her delusion. I had no intention of mourning the end of a marriage ruined by her cheating. At 41, I still felt young enough to find love again, maybe even have more kids. Megan, in her 30s, might share that desire. It was early to think about such things, but as a single mom, it could be important to her. As for me, it had been months since I'd been intimate, and I wondered how I'd navigate this new chapter of my life. The next evening, I prepared carefully. After work, I showered, shaved, and dressed in a casual yet sharp outfit. Glancing in the mirror, I was pleased with what I saw. My body was in good shape, and my brown hair still hadn't turned gray. With a solid job, savings, and a stable life, I considered myself a catch, especially for someone like Megan. Yet, I couldn't deny I was nervous. Marriage had given me comfort and familiarity, but dating felt like uncharted waters. Would I remember how to please someone new? I could only hope we'd have a natural rapport. Arriving at her house with wine, flowers, and a stuffed animal for Chloe, I aimed to make a good impression. When Megan opened the door, I was stunned. Her curly red hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and her sundress showcased her legs beautifully. Her hot pink toenails matched her fingernails perfectly, and the light makeup accentuated her features. "Do I pass the test?" she teased, her eyes sparkling. "God, yes," I blurted, then laughed awkwardly. She chuckled, taking the gifts and inviting me in. Chloe was engrossed in a cartoon, so I knelt beside her and offered the stuffed bear. At first, she hesitated, but her face lit up as she took it, dashing off to show Megan. Watching her, I felt a pang of nostalgia for when Emily and Sophie were that age. "What's wrong?" Megan asked gently, pulling me back to the moment. I forced a smile. "Nothing. Just thinking about my daughters when they were Chloe's age." Megan's face softened. "Is it really that bad?" "They still won't talk to me. Laura's turned them against me, and I can't change their minds," I admitted. "But I leave them messages every day. I won't stop trying." "I'm so sorry, Mark. I know how much this hurts," she said, squeezing my hand. I told them about our date, I confessed with a wry smile. Laura texted, calling me a prick for moving on. Megan bit her lip, looking cute as she asked, "Do you think I'm moving too fast?" "Maybe," I admitted, "but I'd be happy to find out with you." She smiled and took my hand. "Dinner's ready. I hope you like pasta with meat sauce." "Sounds perfect," I said, following her into the kitchen. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope, not just for a fresh start, but for the chance to build something meaningful again. "Sounds great. Oh, I've got garlic bread too, so be ready for us to make out on the couch later," Megan joked. Chloe giggled, while I froze at Megan's candidness. She noticed my awkwardness and smiled. "Mark, we're both adults, and I've known you for 3 years. I know what kind of man you are, and I really like you. You're about to be a hot commodity, and I want to stake my claim early." "Hot stuff?" I quipped, raising an eyebrow. "Absolutely," she said, grinning. "You have no idea how much buzz your divorce has caused at the store. Your return to the market, so to speak, has caught the attention of a lot of women. You're handsome, in great shape, stable, smart, and we all know how seriously you take fidelity. I'm just making my move before someone else does." Her confidence was flattering. Taking her hand, I replied, "I like you too, Megan." Chloe chimed in with perfect timing, "I like sketty." "Me too," I said, eyeing the Parmesan cheese jar. "The fattier, the better. And it has to be topped with stinky cheese." "It's parm, not stinky cheese," Chloe giggled as I pretended to sniff the jar dramatically. "Wow, this is really stinky cheese," I teased, making her laugh even harder. Megan chuckled and shook her head. "You're terrible." Over dinner, we kept the conversation light. I asked Chloe about preschool, and she eagerly shared stories about her friends and favorite games. Megan watched quietly, her face soft with contentment. "She hasn't even told you about her favorite TV shows yet," Megan joked as she started clearing the plates. Later, after tucking Chloe into bed, Megan joined me on the couch with a glass of wine. She nestled against me, her warmth comforting. "Being a mom is the highlight of my day," she said, "but moments like this are precious." I put my arm around her, and she leaned closer. "It's even busier with 2 kids," I admitted. "Do you think your girls will come around?" she asked softly. "I hope so," I said, my voice heavy. She kissed my cheek. "Don't give up. They're your daughters, Mark. They'll see the truth eventually." Setting her glass aside, Megan leaned back and looked at me seriously. "Mark, I've been clear that I like you. I'm too old to play games. I want to keep seeing you, and that includes inviting you into my life, completely." I started to respond, but she raised a hand. "I know you want to be a gentleman, but you don't have to tiptoe around this. I'm not looking for flings. I want an exclusive relationship. My daughter needs a father figure, and I need a husband. That's what I'm offering." I tried to speak again, but she cut me off. "Most guys bolt after this kind of conversation. If you're looking to play the field, I'm not your match. But if you want something lasting, I'm here." I couldn't help but admire her directness. "Impressive," I said. "Was that rehearsed or spontaneous?" She frowned, misreading my tone. "Megan, I've enjoyed our professional relationship for 3 years, and these coffee meetups have been wonderful. I'm a family man. It's all I've ever known. The idea of dating terrifies me. If my wife hadn't strayed, I'd still be happily married. No, I'm not interested in playing the field." Her smile returned as she took my hand. "You're charming, intelligent, and you're great with spaghetti." We both laughed, and she nudged my shoulder playfully. "I'd like you to be my boyfriend. Let's build something meaningful, together, with Chloe." That night, we refrained from intimacy, despite the temptation. I wanted to respect the gravity of what we were building. Fate seemed to favor me when an unexpected opportunity presented itself. The man who contributed to the demise of my marriage applied for a night manager position at my store. Recognizing him instantly, I orchestrated his hiring, anticipating a chance for payback. On his second shift, I left a 40-inch TV in his car, identical to mine. By morning, it would be out of stock. At the end of his shift, I walked him to his car, chatting casually about his team. When I spotted the TV in his back seat, I feigned surprise. "Ryan, did you buy that TV today? We're not even open yet." "No, Mark, it's not mine," he said, panicked. "I have no idea how it got there." "Let's head back to the store and sort this out," I suggested. His fear was palpable. Once inside, I pretended to check the cameras, knowing I had disabled the security system earlier and covered the lens with tape. As he grew frantic, insisting on his innocence, I called the police. Though I had hoped for harsher consequences, he received only a misdemeanor and community service. Still, his termination was swift, and he never suspected my involvement. The following Saturday, Megan waited in her car to stay warm. When I parked beside her, she greeted me with a kiss and confirmed our dinner plans. "Absolutely," I said. "Good, because I'm cooking something special. You won't want to miss it," she teased. Before I could respond, Laura's voice interrupted us. "Mark," she called, her tone sharp. Megan's irritation was evident. "Laura, what do you want?" I turned to face her. "I've been trying to call you," Laura said. "Did you block my number?" "Yes," I replied. "After your 30 messages calling me a prick for continuing to live." "I'm done, Laura." Her mouth opened to argue, but I turned back to Megan. "Shall we go?" Megan smiled, her confidence a balm to the tension Laura had caused. "Let's." As I walked away with Megan, hand in hand, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. "What do you want?" I asked, irritation evident in my voice. "We need to talk about the girls and their plans for college," Laura said firmly. "They can go wherever they want." "I've already handled their finances," I replied curtly. "I'd like to be involved, but thanks to you poisoning them against me, they won't even talk to me." Laura's eyes narrowed. "They're afraid you'll refuse to pay their tuition." Megan, who had been quietly standing beside me, chuckled. "He's already lost them in the divorce. What else is there to threaten him with?" Laura glared at her. "This is your fault, Mark. If you'd just forgiven me for one mistake, none of this would have happened. You've cost me my marriage, my family, my daughters, and even my mother." I took a deep breath, my patience slipping. "You'd better not be dating anyone," Laura added venomously. "If I find out you've moved on, you'll never see a second date." Megan's eyes blazed. "No one wants to date a cheating strumpet, unless they're looking for easy entertainment," she shot back. Laura's face darkened as she turned to leave. I watched the tension boil over when Megan grabbed Laura's arm, pinning her against the car. "Stay away from my man," Megan said coldly, jabbing her finger toward Laura's chest. "Megan, stop." I intervened, pulling her back. "She's not worth it." Laura turned on her heel, her voice sharp. "You heard me," she spat before storming off. I turned to Megan, gently taking her hand. "I'm sorry, Mark," she said, looking down. "I got too territorial." "No worries," I replied with a grin. "Parking lot fights are great for my ego." We laughed together as we headed into the store, leaving the drama behind. Later that evening, my mom called, but the call cut off abruptly. Alarmed, I immediately drove to her house, ignoring Megan's calls. By the time I arrived, the ambulance was already gone. I learned she had passed away before reaching the hospital. Sitting alone in the ER lobby, I was overwhelmed by the weight of her loss. Her last words echoed in my mind, and my grief felt unbearable. Megan called again. "Hey, my mom just passed away," I said flatly, my voice hollow. "Oh, Mark, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice soft with sympathy. "Thanks," I replied. "I'm not going to be much company tonight." "Don't worry about that," she said. "You need someone with you. Please let me come over." "All right," I relented. "I don't want to be alone." "I'll be there soon," she promised. On the way home, I made an impulsive stop at my old house. I needed to speak to my daughters, whether they wanted to see me or not. Their cars were in the driveway, but Laura's wasn't, which brought a small sense of relief. Entering through the garage, I made my way upstairs, finding Emily in her room. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, surprised to see me. "What's up?" Sophie asked, appearing behind her. "Did you come here to beg?" Emily added with a scowl. "You can leave." "Grandma had a heart attack this morning," I said, my voice trembling. "She passed away." They both gasped, their expressions softening. "I thought you should hear it in person," I said. "But now I feel like I've damned myself by coming here." I turned to leave, ignoring Sophie's call for me to wait. The pain was too much to bear. Driving aimlessly, I ended up at the small lake where we'd shared so many happy moments when the girls were younger. Despite the cold weather, the still waters brought some solace. Sitting at a picnic table, I wept, grieving not only for my mom but for the estrangement from my daughters. Their anger cut deep, and doubts began to creep in. What had I done to earn their resentment? Laura's betrayal had shattered our family, yet the girls couldn't see it. Lost in thought, I heard footsteps behind me. Turning, I saw Laura and the girls approaching. "How did you find me here?" I asked, turning back toward the lake. "You forgot to turn off our Find My Phone app," Laura said. "Mark, I'm sorry about your mom," she added quietly. "Yeah," I muttered. "Do you regret her passing, or turning her against me?" She fell silent, and I shook my head. "Leave me alone. I can't deal with your stuff right now. I'll never forgive you." Laura lowered her head and stepped back. "I'm sorry, Mark," she whispered before walking away. Sophie spoke up hesitantly. "Dad, we're sorry too. Please forgive us for being rude." Before I could reply, both girls rushed over to hug me. We cried together by the lake. "It's not my fault, girls. Your mother's actions broke us apart," I said, choking on my words. "We're sorry, Dad," Emily said through tears. "We just wanted you to forgive her. She loves you. It's obvious." "Not enough to stay faithful," I replied bitterly. "But I'm sorry, too. I need you girls. You're leaving for college soon, and I'll miss you. Let's not waste more time." "We understand, Daddy," Sophie said. "We won't shut you out anymore." "I wish Grandma had the chance to do the same," Emily added. "Can we come with you, Daddy? We haven't seen your new house yet." "Maybe we could grab some pizza," Sophie suggested. "Sure," I said, smiling weakly. "Let your mom know, and let's head out." Pulling into my driveway, I spotted Megan's car. I'd completely forgotten she was coming over. "Looks like you'll meet Megan," I told the girls. "Is she your girlfriend?" they asked in unison, grinning mischievously. I chuckled. "Yeah, well, we just started dating." "Look at him blushing," Sophie teased. "So cute." They dashed out of the car and bombarded Megan with questions, leaving her visibly bewildered. "Girls, give her a break. Help her inside, and I'll introduce you properly," I said, laughing. After they hurried off, I approached Megan. "Sorry about that," I said sheepishly. She opened the car door with a radiant smile and kissed my cheek. "Your daughters?" she asked. I nodded. "Come on, let's make proper introductions." "You think I look okay?" she asked nervously. "I must look awful." "You look great. They'll love you," I assured her. Moments later, Emily declared cheekily, "You're super hot." Megan laughed, her nervousness fading as the girls' warmth drew her in. For the first time in a long while, I felt like things might finally be falling into place. "Good for you, Daddy," Emily teased after meeting Megan, her comment leaving me momentarily stunned. Megan laughed and suggested, "How about a quick tour of the house? I'll order pizza while you show them around." "Perfect," I replied. "Ooh," the girls cooed, clearly amused by Megan's enthusiasm. As Megan smiled warmly, I decided to wait until the next morning to inform others about my mom's passing. I planned to draft her obituary for Monday's paper and share service details on Facebook. The rest of the evening was spent reminiscing about my mom. We shared stories about her life and the lessons she taught, with a few embarrassing tales about me sprinkled in to keep things lighthearted. Megan was particularly entertained by the time I slipped on a wet pier and fell into the lake. Laughter filled the house, and for the first time in days, the tension began to ease. Before we realized it, it was already 10 o'clock. Girls, it's getting late, I remarked. They frowned but asked, can we stay the night? I don't have beds for the guest rooms yet, I explained, but I'll pick you up in the morning, and we'll go out for breakfast. Okay, Emily said, then added thoughtfully, maybe we could help sort through Grandma's things too. Thank you, I said, genuinely moved. Turning to Megan, I asked, would you like to join us, or do you need to get home to Chloe? She's staying with my parents tonight, Megan replied. Emily's curiosity piqued. Who's Chloe? Chloe is my 4-year-old daughter, Megan said. The girls squealed with excitement. We can't wait to meet her. Megan chuckled at their enthusiasm. Someday soon, I promise. As we returned to my house, Megan commented, your girls are wonderful. I'm so glad you were able to reconnect with them. Me too, I replied, letting out a heavy sigh. I just wish it didn't take my mom's passing to bring us back together. Later, as Megan nestled in my arms, I felt a rare sense of peace and drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I woke to find Megan still snuggled against me under the blanket. I kissed her head softly and apologized for falling asleep on her. It's okay, baby, she murmured, stretching lazily. You've had a lot on your plate. Would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast? I asked. Only if I can bring Chloe, she said. My parents have plans this morning. Of course, I said. My daughters will love her. After fetching Chloe, we met the girls at IHOP. As we walked in, Chloe's small hand in mine, the girls rushed over, scooping her up and twirling her in the air. Chloe squealed with delight as they showered her with kisses. We'll take her to the bathroom, the girls announced, whisking Chloe away before I could object. Do you think they'll get along? I asked Megan with a smirk. She playfully nudged me. I hope they stay friends for years to come. As we ate, Chloe chatted with my daughters as though she had known them forever. She peppered them with questions about college, hobbies, and favorite shows. My daughters, natural babysitters, bonded with Chloe effortlessly. Even Megan seemed to win them over, her warmth and humor breaking through any lingering doubts. Later, we returned to my mom's house to sort through her belongings. Megan had suggested that Chloe stay home to avoid the emotional strain of such a task, and I was grateful for her thoughtfulness. At dinner that night, Emily surprised me with a question. Daddy, are you in love with Megan? We've only seen each other a few times outside of work, I replied, choosing my words carefully. It's too early to say it's love. Okay, Dad, Emily said with a knowing look. But you know those cartoons where girls get dreamy-eyed and hearts flutter? That's Megan when she looks at you. Before I could respond, they declared in unison, we like her. The joy I felt was fleeting. As I set my pizza down and walked to the sink, the weight of their earlier estrangement hit me. Daddy, Sophie asked hesitantly, how could you shut us out all this time and then suddenly say you like Megan? What did we do to deserve that? What did I do? I asked, my voice rising. Do you know how many times I left messages for you? Messages you didn't care to hear? Your mom convinced you I abandoned you. Emily stepped in. It started when Mom told us you could come back to her, and we'd be a family again. When that didn't happen, she said you left us for good and wouldn't pay for college because we stayed with her. Sophie's voice cracked. She said your messages during the divorce were just tactics to win favor with the judge. You believed her? I demanded. Dad, imagine sitting with her every day, hearing her defend one mistake against 20 years of love. We thought you were being unfair, Sophie admitted. What if it was you? I asked. Would you forgive your boyfriend for cheating? They fell silent, tears streaming down their faces. I hugged them tightly, my own tears falling freely. I've missed you both so much, I said. We're sorry, Daddy, they said in unison. Time to go home, I reminded them gently. School's tomorrow. Make sure your mom tells the school about the wake and funeral. You'll need time off this week. After one last embrace, I watched them drive away. Looking up at the sky, I whispered, Mom, you didn't have to leave to bring my girls back, but thank you. I'll miss you. The wake was especially hard for me. Seeing my mom in her casket was both unsettling and comforting. She looked peaceful, as if she had finally reunited with my dad. Mom had planned everything meticulously, and her efforts made the process easier. Laura and the girls arrived halfway through. My daughters greeted me with tearful hugs, while Laura stayed in the background. After the prayer, Laura placed something in the casket, a photo of her, my mom, and me holding our newborn daughters, all beaming. Touched, I moved the photo closer to my mom's hands, tears welling up as I did so. Laura sat at the back, clearly uneasy. Walking over, I said, "Come here. No need to hide." She hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you." Back at the front, my Uncle David offered her his seat, earning a nod of approval from Megan. Holding Megan's hand while Laura sat nearby felt surreal, but thankfully, no tension arose. After the funeral, we gathered at my mom's favorite Polish restaurant. Laura seemed out of place, scanning for a seat. Taking her hand, I guided her to our table. "Laura will always be family," I said, smiling. "No matter where we sit, you're always welcome." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Thank you, Mark," she said, her voice trembling. For the first time since the divorce, I felt like I'd truly let go of the pain she had caused. Life moved on. My daughters Skyped with me weekly while at college, and Megan and I grew stronger. I was even considering proposing soon. Laura was moving on too, dating a divorced dad the girls seemed to like. Some might say I should have forgiven Laura's mistake, but I couldn't. If that made me the villain in some people's eyes, so be it. I was finally at peace.